The official English set list for Twilight Masquerade has just been released. I'm going to rank every card on a tier list from S to F based on the Pokemon itself, the artwork, and the overall card appearance. Now keep in mind, while many of the cards I'm showing will still show Japanese language, this is the official set list that's going to be coming out for English. So the artwork and card design should pretty much be the same, just with English text. S will be absolutely amazing, just an awesome card to look at. A will be a great card, I would definitely be glad if I pulled it. B will be neutral, I neither like or dislike this card. C will be a bad card, either the Pokemon itself is ugly or the artwork and design is not good. And last is F, this is absolute garbage. If you pull this card, you should shred it immediately. First off, we got Tangela, looks like he's tending to some flowers hanging from a tree. We're gonna put Tangela in B tier, I neither like or dislike that card. Next up, we got Tangrowth, it looks like he's happy about something, but we really don't know what. There's really nothing going on in this card. We'll go ahead and put him in B tier along with Tangela. Next up, we got Pinsir. Again, he's just standing in the forest, really nothing going on there. We'll stick him in B tier as well. Next up, we got Spinarak. I don't really like this artwork. It looks like he just got copy and pasted in the middle of this street. Let's go ahead and put him in C tier. Next up, we got Ariados, and this card I actually really like. I don't know if you can tell, but there's some depth added to this, where Ariados is in focus, whereas the outside of the web is blurred. Let's put Ariados in A tier. Next up, we got Sunkern. Not much to say about this card. Let's put Sunkern in B tier. Next up, we got Sunflora, and I don't really know what they were going for with this like brick layered grass. Go ahead and put Sunflora in C tier. Next up, we got Heracross, and while I love this Pokemon, there's just nothing going on in this picture. So let's put Heracross in B tier. Next up, we got Volbeat. I really don't like this Pokemon, and the artwork does not save it. Volbeat's going into C tier. Illumise is next and looks just as bad as Volbeat, going straight to C tier. Next up is Leafeon, great Pokemon and even better artwork here. Leafeon's going straight to A tier. Next up is Phantump, and once again, this is a cool Pokemon and the artwork is even better. Straight to A tier for Phantump. Next up is Trevenant, and while I like this Pokemon, the artwork just does not work here. However, Trevenant's cool enough to keep him in B tier. Next is Grookey, hanging from some vines. Decent card, but nothing too special. Let's put Grookey in B tier. Next up is Thwackey, and unlike the Grookey card, thick borders on everything makes the card really pop, but we'll put him at the very front of B tier. Next up is Rillaboom, decent Pokemon, and it's an okay artwork. Straight to B tier. Next is Applin, and while a lot of people are a fan of this Pokemon, I'm not one of them, and having him sitting next to a bowl of apples kind of seems like a weak concept. Let's put him in C tier. Next is Dipplin, and kind of the same thing, they just got him next to a bunch of cherries because he's a cherry Pokemon. C tier for Dipplin. Next up, we got Iron Leaves, and this is the first card I've seen with this weird phase shift artwork. I definitely like the concept. It makes the less rare cards more interesting, and for that, we're gonna put Iron Leaves in the low A tier. Next up, we got Poltergeist. I guess it's a different form of Polteageist. I don't know. This is just a weird Pokemon. The next card is pretty much the same thing, so let's just put them together in C tier. Next, we got Sinistcha. Again, another form of Sinistea, I guess. Lame Pokemon in my opinion. Let's stick them in C tier. Next, we got Sinistcha EX. Same lame Pokemon, just shiny this time. Yeah, that's gonna be our first EX in C tier. Next, we got Teal Mask Ogerpon. I guess this is one of the new Pokemon from the expansion. I'm not really sure what to think about this Pokemon. We'll have to see more to decide. We'll just put him in B tier for now. Next, we got Teal Mask Ogerpon EX. Same Pokemon, but this card looks a lot better. Let's go ahead and put this card in A tier. I wouldn't mind getting it. Next, we got Vulpix taking a nap in the forest. Let's put Vulpix in B tier. Next, we got Ninetales, and I do like this artwork quite a bit better than Vulpix. Let's stick Ninetales in A tier. Next, we got Slugma, looking like some abstract art, but I wish there was a little bit more detail here. Let's put Slugma in B tier. Next, we got Macargo EX, and this is a pretty cool looking card, but his eyes are really bothering me. And that's gonna be our first EX card in B tier. Next, we got Torkoal blowing off some steam. Let's put Torkoal in B tier. And at number 31, we got Chimchar. Pretty cool Pokemon, but this artwork seems pretty lazy. Chimchar runs straight to B tier. Next is Monferno, and one thing I really like about this card is the fire on his tail is extremely detailed. He's going to A tier. Next is Infernape, and this card isn't extremely detailed, but it does look pretty cool with him hanging right in front of the moon. We'll give him an A tier. Next is Darumaka spitting a fireball with some cartoony artwork. That's going to be a B tier for me. Next is Darmanitan, and I really don't know what's going on in this picture, but still a pretty cool Pokemon, so we'll let him have B tier. Next we got Litwick. I really like this Pokemon, but the artwork is not good at all here. Let's stick him in C tier, actually. Next is Lampent, and same thing here. It's kind of blurry like a water painting. I really don't like it. He can go to C tier with his first form. Next we got Chandelure. Really cool Pokemon, and the artwork isn't so bad this time. We'll let him have B tier. Next is Chi-Yu. Kind of a cool, strange Pokemon, but the artwork is just a bunch of fire. We'll stick him in B tier. Next we got Hearthflame Mask Ogerpon EX, and it's kind of a cool card, but I think the Teal Mask EX was actually cooler. Let's go ahead and stick him in B tier. Next we got Poliwag looking at his reflection in the water, and in his reflection he sees B tier. And we got Poliwhirl striking a pose in front of I'm not sure what. That's going to be another B tier. And we got Poliwrath using some kind of physical water move. Stick Poliwrath in A tier. And we got Goldeen jumping out of the water with a bunch of fireworks. This is actually a really cool card for such a basic Pokemon. That's actually a high A tier in my opinion. And we got Seeking doing absolutely nothing in the water. That's going to be a B tier. And we got Jinx looking really weird, but I actually like the artwork here. It's pretty cool. Let's put Jinx in a low A tier. Next we got Corphish and some really high resolution detail. I really like that. We're sticking him in A tier. And we got Crawdaunt looking for a treasure chest under the waterfall. And behind the waterfall was A tier. And we got Feebas under the water doing absolutely nothing. Let's stick that in B tier. And we got Melodic, much cooler Pokemon, but just as boring artwork. Straight to B tier. Here's Snorunt hiding under an igloo, and he's hiding in B tier. Next is Glalie in some painting-like artwork. Let's paint him into B tier. Same thing with Frostlass, nothing special here. Straight to B tier. Next we got Glaceon, cool Pokemon, and even better artwork. Much more detail in this card. Putting Glaceon in A tier. And we got Phione in a really colorful scene with a lot of detail. Looks like he's underwater in some kind of jungle. Phione's going into A tier. Next we got Froakie, and we love to see those claymation cards. This is definitely a good one. Let's put claymation Froakie in A tier. And we got Frogadier, not claymation this time, but still really solid artwork. Let's put Frogadier in A tier with his first form. And we got Cramorant, decent artwork, but I don't really like this Pokemon that much. Let's put him in B tier. Next we got Finizen. I've never seen this Pokemon before, must be from Scarlet and Violet. Let's put Finizen in B tier. Next is the Evolve form Palafin. Again, kind of a boring Pokemon. Let's stick him in B tier with his first form. Next is Palafin EX, and this is just weird. Why does a dolphin look like he's standing up throwing a punch? That's going to be a C tier EX card. Next is Iron Bundle. Looks like a robotic Delibird. It's got this same new gradient art style. Let's put that in low A tier. Next is Walking Wake. This is a pretty cool Pokemon and pretty decent artwork as well. Let's stick him in A tier. We got another Pokemon from the expansion, Wellspring Mask Ogerpon EX. Pretty cool looking card. Let's stick that in A tier. Next we got Zapdos. Awesome Pokemon. Great artwork. Looks really cool. I'm putting this at the top of A tier. Next we got Shinx. I'm not sure what to say about that pose. Let's let them figure it out in B tier. And we got Luxio. Actually pretty cool artwork here. Lots of detail. Luxio gets some low A tier. Next we got a nice and shiny Luxray EX, and it looks like he's jumping out of the card at you. That's definitely some A tier material. We got Emolga flying around near a lighthouse. Let's let him fly into B tier. And Helioptile just standing around in a desert. Helioptile goes into B tier. Heliolisk is also standing around, but this time in some ancient ruins. Another B tier card. Next is Morpeko. Decent Pokemon, decent artwork. Let's put him in high B tier. Next we got Tadbulb floating around in a forest. He's gonna float into B tier. And we got Bellybolt sitting on a rock. And he's sitting in the middle of B tier. Next up is Wattrel. Again, I don't know why his eyes are so big. Let's put Wattrel in B tier. Next is the Evolve form Kilowattrel, and this artwork is actually a lot cooler, a lot of depth here. You can see him flying through with electricity. Let's put Kilowattrel in low A tier. Next is Iron Thorns EX, and this is a cool Pokemon, cool artwork, and it's got that new gradient in the front of the card. I think this actually deserves our first S tier slot. Next up is Clefairy. Clefairy walking in front of some statues. I actually like how this looks, so let's put him in high B tier. And Clefable striking a pose in front of the moon. Again, gonna be B tier. Next up, we got Abra sitting in the grass, just waiting to teleport away. And he's gonna teleport into B tier. And we got Kadabra looking like he's gonna whack you with a spoon. But he's safely in B tier, so he won't be able to reach you. And we got Alakazam, cool Pokemon, but I don't really like what they did with the artwork here. I'm actually gonna put him in low B tier. Next, we got Girafarig looking really trippy. There's tons of colors in this card. This is actually really cool. If this was a full art card, I'd definitely be giving this an S tier, but it's still good enough to go into high A tier. Next is the evolved form Fair Giraffe, and this Pokemon design is just hideous. I don't know what they did here. I'm actually gonna put this in an F tier. They absolutely ruined a pretty cool Gen 2 Pokemon. And next we got Chimecho hanging out somebody's window, and that's gonna be good enough for B tier. And we got Flabebe looking just as lame as always. And just for that, we're gonna stick him in C tier. Next, we got Floette. Not that much better than Flabebe, but at least the artwork here is pretty cool. For that, Floette goes into B tier. And the final evolution, Florges. Again, pretty lame Pokemon, but decent artwork. So we'll let him live in B tier. And we got Swirlix hanging around with some cotton candy. Decent card. Let's give him high B tier. Next, we got Slurpuff eyeing a pie that he wants to eat. Again, that's gonna be high B tier. Next, we got Sandygas with some really cool crochet artwork. This is really nice. And Crochet Sandygas is going straight into A tier. And we got Polisand, but unfortunately does not have that crochet artwork, so it's just not as cool. He gets an upper B tier. Next up is Enamorus, and this is just a weird Pokemon, and the artwork does not save it. That's going to be a C tier for me. Next up is Screamtail EX. I guess this is like the ancient form of Jigglypuff, and this is a pretty cool card. We'll put Screamtail EX in A tier. Next up is Monkey Dory. This has got to be one of the dumbest Pokemon I've ever seen. Even dumber name, Monkey Dory. This is just painful to look at. That's going to be our second F tier card. Next up is Fezandipity, another weird Pokemon trying to have a pun for a name like the last one. Not quite as ugly though, so we'll give him a break and put him in C tier. Next up is Sandshrew, and the artwork is kind of cool, but nothing that great here. Let's put Sandshrew in B tier. And we got Sandslash slashing through the ground. This is pretty cool, and I think that's good enough for a low A tier. And we got Heesween Growlithe frolicking through the field, and he's gonna frolic right into B tier, followed by Heesween Arcanine, and this is a much cooler Pokemon, even cooler card. I really like the depth that they added here. That's gonna be an A tier for me. Next up is Nosepass. I kind of like the artwork here, but I'm not that fond of Nosepass, so we'll let him hang out in B tier. Followed by Probopass, the even uglier of the two, and I don't even know what's going on with this artwork. Let's put Probopass into C tier. Next up is Timber walking down the street with some high definition, and that's good enough for a high B tier. Next up we got Girder lifting up a beam. Nothing really that cool to see here, so you know that means he's going to B tier. And last of the three we got Conkeldurr. Unfortunately, not any better than the last two. Conkeldurr is going to B tier. Next up we got Greninja EX, and this is a pretty cool looking card. He's got the terastallized ice all over his body, artwork popping out of the card. I would definitely want this card. Greninja EX is going into A tier. Next up is Hawlucha flying in the night sky. He's got the big moon behind him. Let's put him into high B tier. Next up is Glimmet, and this is a really lazy looking card. It looks like hardly any time was put into this. Glimmet is definitely going into C tier. And followed by Glamora. Not as bad of a card, looks pretty cool, but it's good enough to go into B tier instead of C tier. Next is Ting Lu, and this artwork goes crazy. He's stomping on the ground. You see like mud and debris flying up in the air, some distant lighting in the background, a lot of depth with this card. Ting Lu is going into A tier. Next up is Okidogi, and while I don't really like the pun for a name, I actually really like his design, and this artwork is really cool. Okidogi gets into Oki A tier. Next up is Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX, and while the card initially looks kind of cool, I can barely even make out his face here. We'll put him into high B tier. Next up is Poochyena. Nothing that great to see here. He goes into B tier. Followed by Mightyena, and while the artwork isn't a whole lot better, I just like the pose and the way that they established him in the card here. Let's put Mightyena in low A tier. Next up is Venipede. Pretty cool artwork here. I don't really like this Pokemon very much. Let's put Venipede in B tier. Next up is Whirlpede, and while I still don't like this Pokemon a whole lot, I like this artwork, and he's in mid-action doing like rollout or something. I think Whirlpede deserves low A tier. And for the final evolution of Scolipede, this time he's just standing there doing nothing. He goes into B tier. Next up, we got Brute Bonnet. I've never heard of this Pokemon before. He kind of looks like Kung Fu Panda whenever he puts his hat on. But it's got another one of those like gradient effects on the card. So we'll give him a high B tier just because of that cool new gradient effect. Next up is Skarmory, and while this is a cool Pokemon, the artwork just isn't that great here. Let's put him into B tier. Next, we got Aeron. Once again, nothing great to see here. Aeron goes into B tier. And the evolved form Lairon. This is a much cooler card. Really green artwork in the background. This looks like they put a lot of effort into this. Let's put Lairon into A tier. And for the final evolve form, we got Aggron, and he's like mid-form, jumping down off of a cliff with a really cool landing. This is an awesome looking card. Even for a regular card, I think this deserves high A tier. Next up is Heatran. Cool Pokemon, even cooler artwork here. Really awesome card. Heatran gets into A tier as well. Next up, we got Varoom, and it looks like he's driving around like a post-apocalyptic wasteland junkyard. Let's put Varoom into low A tier. Next up, we got Revavroom. It looks like he's digging through a cave or something. It's all right. Let's just put that into mid-high B tier. Next up, we got Applin again. And again, I feel like it's kind of lazy just sticking him next to a basket full of apples. But it's not terrible, so we'll let him have B tier. Followed by Diplin, and yet again, nothing great going on. B tier for Diplin. Next up, we got Dreepy. Cool Pokemon, but lame artwork. Dreepy into B tier. And Dracloak, again, cool Pokemon, but nothing going on in the art. Dracloak into B tier. And the fully evolved Dragapult EX. Quite a bit cooler card here with the artwork coming out. Good enough for a low A tier in my opinion. And next up, we got Tatsugiri. This Pokemon is really strange to me. He looks like a sushi about to be eaten, but I do kind of like the artwork that's going on here. We'll put Tatsugiri into high B tier. And we got Farfetch. It looks like someone just scared him in the middle of a field. Not that great, so going into B tier. And we got Chansey sitting down in the middle of a field of grass. Let's put Chansey into B tier. And we got the evolved form Blissey EX. Pretty decently cool looking card. Good enough for low A tier, I'd say. Next up is Eevee, and while the background artwork isn't super detailed, I really like the artwork on Eevee itself. Really pretty card. Let's put Eevee into A tier. And we got Snorlax hanging out in town. Nothing crazy going on, but it is really highly detailed, and it's a pretty cool card to look at. Let's put Snorlax into A tier. And we got Apom hugging his tail while sitting on a tree branch. Let's give that a low A tier. Next up is Ambipom. The artwork is pretty decent, but I really don't like the design of this Pokemon. Let's put Ambipom into B tier. Next up, we got Ducklet chilling in a little pond, and the water spout is a Magikarp. I really like that added detail there. Ducklet's not that cool, but I think that's good enough to give him low A tier. Followed by the evolved form Swanna, but it doesn't have any added detail like the last card, so that's gonna get a B tier for me. Next up is Blood Moon Ursula EX. The design of this card is really cool. He's slashing through the side. It looks like Five Nights at Freddy's mixed with Terminator. Let's put him into low S tier. Next up, we got all the trainer cards, and unless I say otherwise, just assume it's going into B tier. Accompanying Flute, Bug Catching Set, Caretaker, Carmine, Community Center, Cook, and I actually think this one deserves low A tier. I love the detail of this card. So let's put Cook into low A tier. Enhanced Hammer, Festival Grounds, Handheld Fan, Hassel, Hyper Aroma. I'm not sure if they're going to keep this exact design in the English set, but if they do, this is a really sick looking trainer card. Let's put Hyper Aroma into high A tier. Jamming Tower, Kieran, Lana's Aid, Love Ball, Lucian, Lucky Helmet. Next is the Ogre's Mask Pokemon, and it features all 4 of the new Mask Pokemon from the Twilight Masquerade expansion. We'll give that one a high B tier, unlike the other trainer cards. Perrin, Rayfort, Scoop Up Cyclone, and while I know this card has been in a lot of sets, it's always a pretty cool looking trainer card, and it's got that new design just like that last one. Let's put that into high A tier because of that new design. Secret box, and again, it's got that cool new design, and the design of the box itself is pretty cool also. Let's put that into A tier as well. And we got survival brace, again with the new design, and this almost looks like a Yu-Gi-Oh card to me. I kind of like it. Let's also put that into A tier. Next, we got unfair stamp, and again, it's got that cool new design. So let's stick it into A tier as well. Boomerang energy. Next, we got Legacy Energy, and not only does it have that cool new design, but the design of the artwork in the center is really cool also. Let's put that into high A tier above all the other cool trainer cards. All right, we are now on to the most anticipated section, the secret rare full arts. Let's check these out. First up, we got Pinsir, and I didn't know he could, but it looks like he's giving out a big old grin. He's hanging out in a farm with some really cool artwork in the background. This is a great full art card. Let's put Pinsir into S tier, and we already know a lot of these full arts are going to go into S tier, but I'm going to rank them in order of the ones that do. Next up is Sunflora. Also got some pretty cool artwork here. It's all tinted in like some blue, which makes the Sunflora pop even more. Just doesn't quite excite me as much as the Pinsir, so we'll actually give that a high A tier. Next up is Dipplin, and I don't really care for this Pokemon that much, but it is a pretty cool design card. It looks like they're setting up for a festival. This guy on the left has one of the new masks on the back of his head. I like that detail. Let's put Dipplin into high A tier as well. Next up is Poltergeist, hanging out with a kid inside of his room. Not a very cool Pokemon, and this artwork is just not that great. However, it is still a full art. Let's put this into low A tier. Next up, we got a Torkoal full art, and it looks like he's being used as a kiln for this professional potter to make his vases. The initial look of the card isn't really awesome, but the more you look, the more of the story is told, and I really like that. Let's put Torkoal into S tier, but below the Pinsir card. Next up, we got a full art Infernape. Really cool bright card. He takes up the whole space. The only downside of this card is since he takes up the whole card, it almost looks more like an EX card than a full art card. Let's give Infernape S tier, but I'd put him right between Torkoal and Pinsir. I still like the Pinsir card better. Next up, we got full art Frostlass, and it looks like she's creeping around a traditional Japanese building, and the way she's coming around the corner, it's really creepy. I don't really like Frostlass, but because of that cool design, we'll give it a low S tier. Next up, we got Phione, and the way they designed the artwork, it almost looks like it's a picture of a painting. The whole card has like a texture to it. Overall, a pretty cool card, but I wouldn't say I love it. Let's put the Phione card into high A tier. Next up, we got a Cramorant, and it looks like he's in the middle of town with everyone running around. Everything is blurred except for him. Pretty cool depth of the card. Let's give Cramorant a high A tier. Next, we got a Heliolisk, and he's running across the water just like the basilisk lizard in real life that runs across water. Pretty cool design here. I don't love the Pokemon, however. Let's stick him in high A tier. Next up, we got Wattrel diving into the water. The only thing I wish they added here was some kind of Pokemon fish that he's trying to catch. But overall, it's a pretty cool card. I don't think it quite deserves S tier, but let's put it at the very top of A tier. Next up, we got Chimico hanging out next to some wind chimes. Everything else is blurred, but Chimico is focused in. It's kind of designed as if a photographer took this picture, so that's pretty cool. Let's put Chimico right in the middle of A tier. Next up, we got Enamorus, which is a legendary Pokemon. I'm not necessarily a fan of this Pokemon, but this artwork is extremely unique, and I really like the design of it. Let's put this into S tier right below the Pinsir. I still like the Pinsir card the best so far. Next up, we got a Hisuian Growlithe, and he's looking like just a good old boy. You can see he's jumping up on his trainer's legs, trying to get some attention. You can see patches of sun coming through the cloud, landing on his face and on his chest. Really love the design of this card. Let's put Hisuian Growlithe into S tier, and I think he's actually going to dethrone the Pinsir card, just barely. But I would equally love to pull either one of these cards. Next up, we got a Probopass. Looks like he's pretending to be a statue in the middle of town. Really not a fan of this Pokemon, but this artwork is pretty cool. Let's put Probopass into S tier, but below the Torkoal and Infernape. Next up, we got Timber carrying up some 4x4s to help out a construction crew. You can even see the 4x4s are notched because they're going to be used as braces for the the roof. And in the very back of the card, you can actually see a girder. And even farther back of the card, you can see houses and mountains and fields. The depth of this card is absolutely awesome. This definitely goes into S tier. The hard part is going to be where to place it. I think I'll put him right below the Pinsir and the Hisuian Growlithe. Next up, we got a Lairon with an oil barrel in his mouth. It looks like he's in some kind of recycling center. Pretty cool artwork here. Let's put Lairon into low S tier with the Frostlass. Next up, we got Applin, and once again, they go with the cop-out of just sticking him with a bunch of apples. However, the artwork of this card is really good. Just look at the detail of that apple tree. You've got a cabin house in the background. You can see another apple tree in the background. Really just a beautiful card. Let's put Applin straight into S tier right after the Timber card. Next up, we got Tatsugiri. Again, really not a fan of this Pokemon. Pretty unique artwork though. Pretty cool card. Let's put Tatsugiri into high A tier. I'm gonna put him below the Diplin card though. I think I like the Diplin card better. Next up, we got a full art Chansey card. Chansey's carrying a stack of trays in a rush. You got Snorlax taking a nap in the back. You got a Blissey working the front counter. And then you got a Bellsprout, a Psyduck, and a Ditto walking around the main lobby. Really like this card. I'd love to pull it. Let's put Chansey straight into S tier between the Pinsir and the Hisuian Growlithe. Next, we got a full art Eevee card, and this card is beautiful. We got 8 Eevees hanging out inside somebody's house. You got sunshine coming through the window. You got one Eevee playing with a Hydreigon toy. You got one Eevee taking a nap in its bed. And the overall artwork of this card is awesome. This is gonna be one of the most sought after full art cards, I've got a feeling. Let's put full art Eevee at the very top of S tier. Next up, we got Sinistcha EX full art. Terrible card, terrible Pokemon. I would be sad if I pulled this. We're putting Sinistcha EX into F tier. It would just be a pure waste of a pull to have that card. Next up, we got Teal Mask Ogerpon EX. Definitely cooler than that last one, but still not that great of a card. It would be a waste of a pull. Considering it's a secret rare, let's put that into C tier. I would not be very glad if I pulled that. Next up, we got a Macargo EX secret rare, and it looks like he's terastallized. You can see at the top of his back. Little bit of a cooler card than that last one. Let's put Macargo somewhere in the middle of A tier. Pretty decent card. Next up is Hearthflame Mask Ogerpon EX. It's just like the last mask card, but it does look a little bit cooler with the red on it. I'm pretty neutral on this one, so let's just throw him into B tier. Next up, we got Palafin EX striking some kind of pose. Again, I'm pretty neutral on this card. Let's throw Palafin EX into B tier. Next up, we got Wellspring Mask Ogerpon EX. Again, just like the other two. It's cooler than the Teal Mask card, so let's put it into B tier. Next up, we got Luxray EX. Pretty decent card, but I'm pretty neutral about it. Let's put that one into B tier as well. Next up, we got Iron Thorns EX, and this is a really cool looking card. The background really makes the Pokemon pop with that contrast. Really great design. Let's put this one into S tier behind the full art Probopass. Next up, we got Screamtail EX full art, and again, a pretty cool background on this card. A lot of colors, really good detail, nice card. Not as cool of a Pokemon, so we'll put him in S tier, but let's put him at the bottom of S tier. Next up, we got Greninja EX. Pretty cool looking card, but doesn't really blow me away. Let's stick Greninja in A tier. Next up is Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX. Just like the other Mask EX cards, not that cool to look at. Let's stick him in B tier. And next up is a Dragapult EX card. Decent card, but nothing crazy going on here. Let's stick him in low A tier. Followed by Blissey EX. Pretty similar to the Dragapult card, nothing special going on. Let's put Blissey EX in low A tier as well. And we got Blood Moon Ursula EX. Unlike the last two, it's got that really cool background with different colors going on. I really like this card. Let's put Blood Moon Ursula EX in low S tier. Next up, we got our trainer full art cards, and first up is Caretaker. Pretty decent card, but nothing too special. Let's put Caretaker in A tier. Next up is Full Art Carmine, same thing here. Let's put Carmine in A tier. And we got Full Art Hassel, A tier. Full Art Kieran, I like the colors in this card quite a bit better. Let's put Full Art Kieran in high A tier. And we got Full Art Lana's Aid. I know this is a pretty popular character and it's got a lot better background going on here. I think the Full Art Lana's Aid deserves low S tier. And we got Full Art Lucian. Let's stick him in A tier. Next is Full Art Parent. I could see this being a pretty popular card. Let's put Full Art Parent in low S tier. Next, we got a Full Art Sinistcha EX card. As I've said before, I really don't like the design of this Pokemon, but the artwork in this full art is actually decently cool. We'll stick Full Art Sinistcha somewhere in A tier. And we got Teal Mask Ogerpon EX Full Art. Just a typical EX card, nothing too special here. We'll stick him in A tier somewhere. Same with Hearthflame Mask Ogerpon EX. We'll put that in A tier as well. And the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon EX card will also go into A tier. Next, we got a Greninja EX full art card, and the design of this card is awesome. It looks like we got paint splash spilling everywhere in all different colors. Really good design, tons of colors. Love this card. We're gonna stick this Greninja EX card up in S tier next to Infernape. I think I actually like it better than the Infernape card. We'll put him in front. Next, we got Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX. Same story as the other Mask EX cards. We'll just throw that somewhere into A tier. Next, we got a full art Blood Moon Ursaluna EX card, and he's drinking lava out of a volcano. In the back, you can see some Teddiursa's watching and a Munchlax watching. Really cool card overall. I wouldn't say it blows my mind by any means. Let's put Blood Moon Ursaluna in S tier below the Greninja card. Next up, we got Carmine full art, and I love the detail of this picture. It looks like she's out eating street foods, and you can see it's focused in on her face. This is a really cool card. Let's put her in S tier right in front of the other two trainer S tier cards. Next up is full art Kieran, and looks really similar to the last card, except it doesn't have that focus in on the face that I liked as much. Still a low S tier card. We'll just put it right below the last one. Next up, we got an alternate art Lana's Aid, and she's hanging out next to a stream with a Wooper, a Corphish, and a Surskit. This is a really cool looking card. I like it a lot. Let's put this full art Lana's Aid right in front of the Applin card. I like it a little bit better. Next up is an alternate art Perrin. Okay, this is crazy. If you look at the camera lens, and you can see the Hisuian Growlithe. This means that this card matches up with the full art Hisuian Growlithe card. That is awesome. This is going straight up to S tier right next to the Growlithe that she's taking a picture of. Next, we're getting into the gold cards, and first up is Teal Mask Ogerpon EX. Gold cards are always really cool, but this Pokemon just isn't the best, and I don't really like the design of the card. We'll stick it into S tier, but somewhere towards the bottom with the trainer cards. Next is a golden Blood Moon Ursaluna EX card. This is much cooler looking than the Ogerpon Mask card. Let's put the golden Ursaluna up into S tier, somewhere towards the top, but not like super high. Next is a golden Buddy Buddy Pofin card. Let's put this at the very top of A tier. I don't think it's quite good enough to be an S tier card. And we got a golden Enhanced Hammer. Same story as the last one. Let's just put that in high A tier. Next up is Golden Rescue Board. I actually like the design and looks of this card a lot better than the last two. Let's stick this into low S tier. And before we get to the final card, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. And 3, 2, 1, the final card is Golden Luminous Energy. It looks better than the first two golden trainer cards, but not quite as cool as the last one. So let's put this in low S tier right below the skateboard. All right, here is the final tier list, and with the amount of S tier cards, this is looking like a really good set. If you liked this video and want to check out more, YouTube thinks you would like this one coming up next.